Welcome, Clare.
Thank you, Catherine.
We generally start talking about the weather. It's been a cold, well, no, it's been a warmer day here, but dull. What about with you? How's the weather been with you?
Oh, yeah, today was lovely, actually. Nice change after
The wind.
Very turbulent weekend, yeah.
Right, well, we're here to talk about observations. So let's start by talking about what an observation is, because I think it's much broader than maybe we think it is. What do you think?
So, yeah, an observation for me is it's where you take stock of what a child has said or done from the minute they arrive at the school or the setting in the morning till they go home again in the afternoon. I always say an observation is a kind of a snapshot of fact, and you're looking at everyday ordinary moments. You're not looking for a wow factor. You're not looking for negative behaviors. You're looking for just a snapshot of that child all the way through. And parents also can give you very valuable insights into their children. And the nice thing about parents is they will give you the anecdotal information, what the child actually did, what they said, and that is an observation. They're not giving you an assessment. You're the person who then can take those nuggets and convert it into the assessment later. So yeah, for me, that observation is just an everyday ordinary fact captured in that moment, basically.
I also think that observations, particularly from what parents are saying, you know, what the child's interested in or what they're fascinated in at the moment in time, and that can be brought into planning. I don't think we're going to be able to have a discussion tonight without mentioning planning.
Yeah.
So I think observations also around parent scenarios, what's going on at home, again, that can be pulled into planning. Make the link for the child between home and the setting as well, which I think is really important. And also what what they've done at the weekend, their cultural capital, as we call it in the EYFS, the experiences they've had at home as well. I think that's really important for us as practitioners, as educators. Yeah. But then we all have different ways of doing it, and we've got people in the audience that do in the moment planning. I'm an advocate of on the go, everything being done on the go. And Clare has her own. Do you want to explain, Clare?
I suppose in some ways I do dip a little bit towards in the moment planning. But at the same time, I suppose in Northern Ireland, we have the Northern Ireland curriculum, which from preschool right through, we have to follow that. So that's set down that these are our guidelines that we must follow. So when I talk about doing observations, we can collect the observations, do the assessment against our 6 areas of the curriculum, and then we can feed that into the 6 areas of the curriculum for the children. So it's not just as free flow as in the moment planning. There is a curriculum running alongside what we know about the children. So we're always picking up the information about the children first, and we feed that into our planning tool, and then we say, okay, what else does the curriculum tell us that we need to do? So it's that nice balance between child-led and adult-led. And adult-led for us is the curriculum.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're obviously following the EYFS framework. Yeah. And for me, I would say we should be following child development, because wherever the children are in the world, they develop not in a similar way, holistically in a similar way. I also am actually a little bit influenced by in the moment as well, because on the go, doing everything on the go is in a very similar way to in the moment. But I wouldn't focus on a particular number of children. I think all staff should do observations on all the children. So although the key person perhaps is the person that needs to be responsible for making sure that child is being, needs are being met within the group. Come on, folk on the chat.
So again, you said there about not focusing on a group of children. My approach actually is set up to make sure that no child gets left behind. That was the premise that I set out with. And traditionally what was happening in settings right across both UK and Ireland, I could see whenever adults were following all children all of the time, that some children took up more of your time than others. For different reasons. So in order to make sure that whenever you would arrive in November and you would look at your assessments, you'd be sitting with a file and you would have this much information on some children and just a few words about other children. So in order for that not to happen, I still recommend that all adults observe all children all of the time, but that they actually only assess 3 children per week. So it's different, and the terminology is really important there, Catherine. Observations are where you take the note, where you collect snapshots. Assessment is where you do the digging deep into what are these observations telling us about the child. Yeah. And that's the bit that I need people to understand, that I'm definitely not just observing 3 children per week. We're continually observing all of the children, but you cannot humanly do assessments on all children. So we just take them 3 at a time and work our way through the system. And at the end of, if you've got 27 children in your class, well then at the end of 9 weeks, you have all of your children assessed. You can take a break for a week and not do any assessments and then get back on again and start and go again. And realistically, it takes children 9 weeks to actually make changes. You know, if they need help with their language, if they need help with physical development, they're not going to change that over the next week. They need a period of time for interventions to actually happen.
So you're thinking of chunks of curriculum, aren't you, when you're talking like that?
In what way?
Well, you know, I mean, we've shared each other's
it's probably child development we're talking about. We're talking about how to move them from, you know, where they are to the next place. And some children may need support with their physical development. Some may need support with language development. Some may need support with personal, social and emotional development. And particularly in the preschool at this stage, well, actually, more so in the first term, those are the 3 key areas, and you call those the prime areas. Those really are the areas where children need the most support. And I always give great credit to the people who wrote our curriculum documents, even the EYFS, the Northern Ireland curriculum, no matter where you are. The people who wrote those documents are experts in their field. They know child development and they have built that into those documents. So I feel fairly confident whenever we follow those that we are actually not doing too bad a job.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So I don't, you see. I've worked in many situations where practitioners find it, first of all, I think that our EYFS, our Development Matters or Birth to 5, not so much so, are big steps, and I think those need to be broken down.
Okay.
And when they're broken down into smaller steps, actually you're noticing them, you know, that you notice something every day that the child is doing. And in a nursery situation or a preschool situation, you don't have the same children in every day, like perhaps in a school, in a classroom. So there are children perhaps you only see twice a week. But I do think you do need to have a mechanism that where you can monitor which children you've done observations on today and which, you know, during the week, and what observations, the types of observations you've done. I do think that's very important. So no child is overlooked.
Yeah.
But having a system that enables you to do that ensures that that doesn't happen, and children aren't left behind because you notice where their strengths and weaknesses are as well. I could talk about this all for ages, because this is what I based my retirement on.
Yeah, because you do have that sort of lovely developmental sort of ladders within your Spark framework, which I did. I looked at those and thought that was quite nice. And you have broken those very broad sort of developmental milestones for children down into nice little succinct points. Again, for anybody that's here from Northern Ireland, we also have our preschool profile statements, which some of the teachers here would know that I would recommend that they use those. It's not an electronic document, it's just kind of a Word document that we have that CCEA, our Curriculum Council, produced, and it has those.
Do settings use those as well?
They do. They use those whenever they're doing their assessment, because it helps them break down each of their observations into those little more discrete sort of steps for children. And also it's quite useful whenever you're trying to plan to the next level. You have sort of an idea of where you need to take your children to next.
Yeah, the same with us. I mean, we call our system on the go. So we do spot and note observations and shoot, where you take a picture. Shoot and store observations. But as that's happening, the software naturally gives the educator some new ideas in what they could be doing with the child next. Doesn't tell them how to do it, it just gives them an idea of what the objectives perhaps could be for the child, but they have a big choice. Right, we've had some comments, so let me just read some of the comments. We've got somebody: we focus on 2 children a week, and every member of the team do an observation. We ask parents for feedback, what their interests are, what new learning and anything different happening at home. We then discuss as a team in our meeting, and key worker completes the assessment. That's fantastic if you can have a meeting about observations in a nursery situation. I don't know if you're a nursery or not. No, you're in Ireland. Another one here. We focus on 4 children a week. All staff observe, provide different points of view. We continue to note incidentals of other children, but staff assess the 4 focused children at the end of the week together, so we can make next roll forward onto planning. Okay.
Yeah.
See, my system is more in the moment, on the go. It's there and it's there. For that practitioner, whatever their qualification or whatever their ability is, they don't necessarily go together. Whoever is there can actually help the child move forward with whatever it is that they're doing with the children at the time, and focused on the children's interests and schemes. Some people call those schemes, transporting and that sort of thing. And that's why I say we can't, observations are so important, aren't they? So we know where the children are at, so we can move children forward appropriately, being what I call stage appropriate, rather than taking big steps and missing out the important bits in between that helps the child feel confident and have the desire to learn more, I think. Okay, folks, we've got lots of in the moment planning people on the debate tonight. Are people doing it on paper? Are they doing it digitally? Have they tried something else in the past that they liked, perhaps in a different setting? Or what are their bugbears? What sort of things hold you back from doing observations? Or what are the barriers to perhaps doing the job you want to do, the best job possible? I'm quite happy to share mine. I obviously talk to settings a lot, as does Clare. Time, that's where the meeting doesn't happen, I think. certainly in nurseries and preschools. I think that's really difficult to find time to talk about individual children.
I'd also think 4 children per week, to do an assessment on 4 children per week is probably quite a lot. Especially if you're a full day nursery, Frances, which I think you are. But if you're a dual day nursery, then you have to try and keep up with it and do 4 days. Now, what we mean by dual day nursery, Catherine, is we have a group of children in the morning, and then another group in the afternoon, which is really hard going for the nursery practitioners in that regard. You mentioned there about paper. Somebody there has, so
about
again,
post-it notes, taking staff away from the children. Now, I think that's awful. I mean, to write an observation in the room with the children present, writing a long observation, and then so you're not interacting while you're making that observation, and then having to cross-reference that, and then look at what the child needs to do next, and their interests perhaps are not what they were today, next week, I think is quite difficult. And I've tried to stamp that out in my software. How much? So
again, what we would do, we do recommend, well, it's not that we recommend paper or post-its. You can, and everybody takes their observations whatever way they want to. What I'm more concerned about is the process. So it doesn't matter if they can type a note or write a note or take a photograph, so long as they just capture that moment. And I do say to practitioners as well, do not go around your room like this.
No.
Or like this, no, just don't go there.
That's right.
So I was in a classroom one day, and the teacher really was trying to get, she was really trying to get her head around observation and assessment. She was working so hard at it, and she walked around with her little notebook the whole time, in her hand, and her pen in her hand, like this the whole time. And I was doing some mentoring with her that day.
Sorry.
And I said to her at one point, I said, look, just very discreetly stepped in alongside her, and I said, would you mind just put that away? You don't need it. You need to be with your children. You need to sort of be present with them. If you see something really important, you can go and write down 2 words, and that will remind you to go back and make a more full observation later. Or whenever the children are very engaged or interacting with materials and resources or each other, and they don't need you, then you can make your note. So she set it down. She kind of got that message. So that was fine. She set it down, and 5 minutes later, one of the children saw her notebook sitting and went and got it and gave it back to her because she wasn't carrying it around with her. So somebody's
actually said how much detail to include.
Yeah.
See,
so she has now very much got her head around it. She has got that down to the minimum. So, I often say to practitioners, if you write down 3 or 4 observations in the day, that's probably enough. You do not need loads of information. You need really good, sound observations, and that gives you enough to work with on the child then going forward.
Somebody's written how much detail to include. I personally think you just need to write down the bits that you need.
So Jane, can I give an example of an observation? So,
yes,
and you can think about this. So as Maeve walked into the classroom, she saw Mrs. Murphy and said, "Good morning, Mrs. Murphy," and she went to the bathroom and washed her hands. Observation.
Yeah.
It's like 10 words or whatever.
Yeah, and for me,
that goes into Maeve's pocket to be held there until the end of the week or whatever time you're going to do the assessment. And Maeve, it might not even be the end of the week, because Maeve may not be one of the children that we're targeting this week. She's just one of the incidental observations that we note. So we can pop that into her pocket, and when it comes to the time whenever we do the assessment on her, we have that little very brief observation, but that tells us loads about Maeve. It tells us that Maeve is happy and comfortable to come into the environment. She has the social skills to meet and greet the adult. She knows her routines, to go to the bathroom, to wash her hands, and she's aware of hygiene coming into the classroom. So that's where the assessment comes in, gives us really good, clear stuff from a very simple observation.
Yeah.
And so generally, now I would never do an assessment on one observation. I think that's too unwieldy. What I do is, that's why I say to the practitioners, wait until the end of the week or the beginning of the next week, and then you take 3 of your children, take out whatever number of observations you have on each child, sit down and go through it just like that. What does it mean? What does that observation tell me? And then you get your very clear assessment based on maybe 10, maybe 6 observations. You might not have any more than that in total on a child. People sometimes think we should have 25 observations. You don't. 10 observations will give you loads of information.
And for me, with our system, observations are really quick and the assessment's happening behind the scenes. So it's all automatic. So you can see the stages the child is at, the areas of learning, perhaps where they need extra help and support. And it also cross-references to the characteristics of effective learning. Now, in my role with Ofsted, and also I did some quality assurance work, and in my own nurseries as well. Characteristics of effective learning are often part of life that gets forgotten because educators don't understand it, or they're so close to it they don't realize they're doing it, so they don't recognize it. How does everybody else do the characteristics of effective learning? But in the moment planning, how do you record that? I'd be interested to know. Somebody's asked, so how do you suggest staff write these observations and how do you record them?
Well, I hope that we've kind of just answered that. I hope so, exactly. Karen, but if it's not, do ask. We
do it different. We do both do it differently. But I think the important thing here is that we are doing them. All right. Everybody's here tonight is doing observations. Yeah. Now, there are some settings out there in England who have decided, because Ofsted don't need to see them and because the EYFS isn't demanding them, they've stopped doing them altogether. Yeah. That gives me huge issues. So I'm really pleased that you're doing them and you've made that decision to stay doing them as well. Do you want to share with us why you think they're important? I mean, I've got a whole list of reasons why, but it'd be nice to hear from you guys. I mean, I just imagine a child at 4, let's say, or just 4, okay? Let's say they were 4 on the 15th of September. Okay, so they've got a whole year and they're not going to go to school yet. And you have concerns about them. Suddenly you've got concerns about this child. If you haven't got any observations, you can't backtrack to see, when did they talk? When did they walk? What information can you give the pediatrician or the speech and language therapist? Although hopefully they've got to speech and language before then. But, what information have you got to help that diagnosis, which parents need to get extra funding? You can't have it all in somebody's head that, an educator's head who leaves at the end of the first term. Now, I think it's really dangerous, but none of you guys will be in that situation. But do you know any settings that do that?
And I also, whenever I do observation training, Catherine, we do talk a lot about the importance of the actual observation at the very beginning, that it should be fact. It should be exactly what I described Maeve doing. Nobody can argue with that bit of information. No. She came in, she said good morning, she washed her hands. That's fact. That's your evidence. So
and it's
whenever
quick. And both of us have got a quick and easy system to evaluate and enhance that opportunity, enhance that on top of that observation, because it's very clear. I think that's really important, because that's, you know, in a setting, particularly in a day nursery or preschool, it's not a teacher and a few other people in the classroom. It's a lot of different people that are coming and going on different shifts during the day, on different days of the week sometimes. And one person, which your system works really well for, Claire, because everybody's making observations and you're talking about them at the end of the week. Okay. But where you've got a setting where you've got lots of different educators, all at different stages of their career, perhaps some that are untrained, some that perhaps got degrees, okay, all working together, but they're all looking at different things. And I think having a consistent way of working, which is what Spark provides, enables everybody to deliver equal opportunities across. So let's, for argument's sake, let's just say you've got somebody who's doing their qualification, a student, okay, an apprentice. They actually could be a really, really good apprentice, and I've seen fantastic apprentices that outstrip, you know, staff with very high qualifications, because they just sometimes have a very natural way of doing it. But let's just say you have an apprentice that doesn't know anything about the curriculum or the framework, and doesn't know anything about that particular setting's curriculum, and they don't, and they have some key children, because if you've got a huge nursery, okay, you really need everybody to have key children to spread the load. I mean, it could be a newly qualified member of staff. It doesn't have to be an apprentice if you don't want to give an apprentice key children. But they, you know, the experience that that child has would rest on the expertise of the practitioner. That's what I'm saying. So you could have some children whose key person is very keen, knows exactly where the child is at, can talk about the child, can explain their characteristics of effective learning, can explain the areas of learning that they're doing very well in, and what you're concentrating on and why you're concentrating on that, and how you're concentrating on that by bringing the interests in and including the parents, etc., etc. And then you can have another, you could even have a sibling, you could have twins in the same class who has a different key person who isn't getting any of that. And that's what I've tried to bring into the software. It enables everybody to work in a consistent way. And because of that, you can measure everything. You can measure how well the children are doing, how well different groups of children are doing, how the staff are interacting with the software. If they need training and support, it will be highlighted because of that consistent platform through a digital system. Look, there isn't anything else out there like mine, but it enables everybody to do much better, I think. And in a nursery, you can't talk about it as a group, but you might be able to pull up concerns that you have about particular children or a member of staff skills at supervision. So you've got data there to talk about in that respect. Sorry, you can tell I'm passionate. Can't help it.
So there's a couple of things there,
yes, go on.
Catherine. So again, we don't rely on a key worker system. In fact, a lot of our settings here do have a key worker system, but I ask them not to use it for the purpose of observation. I ask them to step away from that for the reason that you have just explained. So basically what happens is all people, all adults observe all children.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah.
That's
so
what I would always advocate that.
So, and also what happens, even if I'm in the setting, which I'm in settings every week, I will say to the staff, is there anybody you would like me to look at today or do an observation of? Or if I'm just looking at children and adults together, I will take an observation, put my initials on it, put the date on it, and hand it back to the team leader before I leave. So they put it into the child's pocket. I don't even need to know the name of the child. I can just make an observation of a child doing whatever, because all I'm doing at that point is making a quick note of the fact, what they said, what they did. And I've just picked up there, Karen has said there about...
Very interesting.
Yeah, about the observations not having enough detail. For example, Aurora played with bubbles. You're absolutely right, Karen. That is not detailed enough. There's no information in that. And that's what I do a lot of my work around, is probably teaching adults how to make observations that are meaningful, that give us enough information. So you would want to say, how did they play with the bubbles? Did they, were they in what way were they holding the bubbles? Did they have the hand coordination? Did they know how to blow? And this is where you want to get your practitioners more tuned into the detail around that. What kind of is attracting Aurora to the bubbles in the first place? Is it somebody else there? So it's just given that little bit more detail then that you can move in. But I totally agree with you that sometimes people don't have the skills to do that bit. And that is the bit that will make or break the whole process, is that ability to write good details.
Yeah. And she's also said about she had to include the teaching, which made the staff feel reluctant to write them. So
I agree with you. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
What it should or shouldn't.
No, I agree that if you have to put in the teaching, but then you start to stand back, you're writing a record, you're trying to capture facts about your children. Now, if the child is with an adult and you're describing what's happening, you could be saying that the child was playing with was with an adult and counted to 30. And said to the adult, did I leave any numbers out? Which is an observation that I have made. That's kind of showing what the adult role was, and that the adult was playing with the child. But the child actually, once you start to get into doing an assessment on that and look at all of the other observations around that child, you realise that the child is being very cute and is holding the adult in their space by saying, did I leave any numbers out? In other words, are you listening to me? Yeah. You need to listen more acutely to me. So that's what we're picking up from that child, because we have maybe 10 observations that also give us that kind of information that this child is really holding on tight. So it's just having that wee bit of detail.
Somebody said, sorry, I don't have the names by the comments. We always think when an observation is written, so what, to encourage the detail. That's quite a good idea. For me, I would say, so what comes next? Where are we moving? Yeah. So we've been snipping with scissors. What are we going to do next? And keeping track of, okay, several children come to the table, because we generally do scissors at a table, because the activities looks interesting, okay, or the resources look interesting. And it's knowing where each child is with their scissor skills, so that the right resources can be given, and the right help and guidance can be given. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I suppose that takes you a wee bit in towards the planning as well there, Catherine.
That's right. Well,
yeah,
all on the go with me.
I love at the minute, I'm just lifting scissors, but children are now starting to hold scissors like this. You probably have seen that. They're coming at them things back to front. So again, if you are writing an observation, and again, I'm going back to Karen's kind of comment there, you would want your adult to say that the child is holding the scissors in a back to front sort of motion. That's kind of the detail that you want in.
That is very relevant.
And then you would want to take that into the so what section. That's where you do your assessment. And that's the point where you're saying, okay, their hand muscle is not yet developed. Their scissor skills are, still very underdeveloped. And then whenever you go into the now what section of your which is your planning, you need to be saying then, okay, we need to put in place some experiences that are going to support hand muscle development. And my favorite one is working with clay. where they actually get lots and lots of pressing and kneading into the clay, and then also placing scissors in different places around the environment. So and one of the best places to have scissors is outdoors.
Oh, really?
Actually, in your grass patch. Now, obviously, you have to be a little bit more vigilant. So what we tend to do is tie the scissors on a string and have them in nailed onto
Okay.
like a big pot with the grass growing in it, so the children can snip. And they, for some reason, become so much more relaxed in the outdoors. And the scissor, they're not as conscious, because children know very quickly whenever they're doing this, it's wrong. So they feel almost the minute they lift the scissors there on a back foot, they feel, she's watching me, I can't do this, I don't know how to do it. But whenever they're outside, they're more relaxed. And then we can get the scissors turned around for them and they start to relax into it. We've also given children the opportunity to, then we've tied string all around the outside space, which kind of became like a spider's web. And then we got the children who had the least well developed scissor skills to go at the end of the session to snip all the string so that we could put it away again. So, and they just loved that. It didn't feel that they were being brought to the scissor table to rectify something that was wrong.
I wouldn't want children brought to the scissor table anyway. I'd rather they chose to be there. Because
yeah, absolutely.
But
that was just sort of a wee bit on the planning, how we would plan that in. So it's
but I think that's one of the reasons we're doing observations. It's not just to see if it fits into a summative assessment or if it's into a formative assessment profile. It's also about, what we need to be providing now. If a child can snip and they can cut, then where are we going to take them to next?
Yeah, I always think it's like assessment of learning and assessment for learning. So we're we move between the two, assessment of and assessment for. So we're always kind of, where are we at? Where are we going? Yeah.
Yeah, the formative assessment part is the bit that's going on. Yeah. Right, we haven't talked about parents, and I personally, because we've set it up that they can, but it's established that children's brains are 90% grown before they go to school. And I really have a strong belief that if we can enable parents to be involved alongside us in a stage appropriate way, not pushing their child to write before they can hold a pencil properly, we can help them in a stage appropriate way, then the parents have the opportunity to make observations as well that can help us in our role, in our settings. And obviously that helps the child. Again, it's about bringing the two silos together, home and school, or home and nursery, or home and preschool. And I think then we can do much more for those children, benefit the child in a much rounder, more healthy way, perhaps. I haven't thought about it like that before. And I know a lot of settings have scrapbooks or floor books, which they share with parents, but that's after the event, or they send photographs home on their digital device to show the parents what their child has done today, or their child's happy today, or whatever. But I think we, as educators, should be helping parents take it further than that. What do you think, Claire?
Yeah, I think parents, sometimes whenever we bring parents together, we do workshops with them. And like, I'm going out to do a parent session now in a couple of weeks, and you want to see my floor over here because I have stuff on the floor. I'm not going out to talk at parents. We're going out to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am actually going to play with parents, just to sit down with them, and actually what we're going to do is make little mini theatres, and using torches and tracing paper. We're going to make gorgeous little theatres out of cardboard boxes, and put tracing paper or baking paper, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be the screen on our theatre, and then they're going to look for different artifacts to put in behind the screen, and then use torches like this,
Like a light
these
bulb.
little, these bendy torches.
Oh, yeah.
So that will then shine through their screen and make like silhouettes on the other side. But really what we're talking about is mathematical development in the early years. What does, playful ways to create maths, but also what can they do at home? And I'm always very conscious of how can we do this on a shoestring at home? So everybody gets cardboard boxes with their groceries. A bit of greaseproof paper is not expensive. And after that, everybody has a torch or a lamp of some sort, and they can go with this. And you have to make it sort of meaningful for the parents and sort of accessible. The other thing I will often do with parents is sometimes not even go out to say to them, this is something you can do with your children. I have an art background, so what I will do is bring some felting wool with me and just sit and do some felting with them, some wet felting, giving them a little bit of bubble wrap, a little bit of wool, and we just sit and make stuff and talk about the children. And we do all the talk about child development and what have you noticed and what did you notice. So it's very relaxed, it's very non-threatening. I think it's back to something that Karen said as well. Whenever people feel threatened or feel out of sync or feel talked down to, then they don't open up. But actually, whenever you just engage in something nice with them like that, then they start to really tell you what their fears are, what their anxieties are, and then you can give them some tips about how to help their children go forward. So it's about the relationship, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's in nursery scenarios, it's quite hard to get parents to come to things like that, particularly in an evening when they've been at work all day. They go take their child home, they have to get a babysitter. And it's always the parent, in my experience, it's always the parents that you particularly want there that don't turn up. I'm not saying that's not a reason for doing it, but I think it's another challenge for nurseries particularly, day nurseries particularly. I also think that there's actually not enough in the EYFS about parents and partnerships. As I've said, I think we have a duty to help parents understand that reading a bedtime story and clothing your child and feeding your child, or bringing your child to nursery every day isn't actually enough anymore. That they can be actively involved if they're enabled to be actively involved in a non-authoritative and an easy way. There is a way of doing it. And we have different systems for different levels of parent participation. So the parent, they can move up. So the parent can just have a few ideas of what they could do with their child. And it'd be lovely if you'd let us know how they do, to actually working alongside with the same objectives to choose from. It's not robotic from the system, but anyway.
Alice Sharp does some lovely work with parents.
Does she?
Yeah, she does some lovely work. Yeah.
I haven't.
Do you know Alice? Alice is based.
I know.
Yeah,
I know exactly who it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you guys on the chat then? What about parent participation? Do you involve your parents with observations? You don't have to. It doesn't matter which way. Or do you have any good ideas in how to involve parents with observations? In our software, we also have what we call learning stories. So instead of just sending 3 pictures home or a couple of pictures home every day to show the child's been happy and the parent thinks, oh, I don't need to feel guilty, my child's okay. We have learning stories, so you can upload a series of photographs to show a parent how a child is learning a skill, which often can be used for settling in as well. But hopefully the parent will then show the child those photographs at home, so that there's a conversation that happens and a quality moment for the parent and child together, rather than tea in bed sort of scenario if they finish at 6 or 6:30 in the evening. Okay. The other thing about observations, which I was thinking about this afternoon, if it is actually recorded, you can recall that information with the child. You can actually say, do you remember when? And you could show them the photograph or the observation that you've made. Do you remember when? So you bring out that, that recall. We send an online section to encourage them to add photos and interests a week or two before their focus week. Yeah. We do. We have a something similar to Focus Week on Spark. Yeah, well, that's really good that you're encouraging them to add photos. We also encourage parents to add photos and comments to their progress check, actually, as well. So we get that information at whatever stage of parent participation they're in. Okay, right. What else do we need to talk about? We're doing well for time. Oh, the other thing that's about observations for me is that where observations are made and there is it's not just about recording the observation, you know where the child is at, where the child is moving on to next. It makes the educator focus on the child. I've been in many preschools and nurseries where staff plan, not all of them, okay, I'm just saying a large proportion of them will plan on what they like to do rather than what the child needs. And that's such a missed opportunity, isn't it, for their brain development, in my view.
Sometimes, Catherine, that happens. Well, there's a couple of reasons, but sometimes people see something on Pinterest, for example, and think that's a lovely idea and bring it into the setting, and the children love it, and it's a big hit, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the other thing that sometimes hinders people from moving forward with the children is if they are topic led. If the planning is topic led and you have a topic on transport for this 4 weeks, and then next 4 weeks you'll have a topic on, for example,
Chinese New Year.
Chinese New Year, whatever.
Yeah.
And then if that's the case, very often what happens is what you have learned about the children, you will dismiss that in your anxiety to teach to the topic or to the sort of prepared plan that you have in place. And that I just do not run with a topic-led planner. I run with the 6 areas of the curriculum, which is really mapped out around child development within that area. Core concepts, for example, within maths, core concepts, big concepts within the world around us, not small concepts, big things like movement, like caring, those bigger sort of overarching themes. And whenever you kind of work within that, then it is so much easier to link in what the child needs into that. Which is probably where the in the moment planning comes in a bit close to what I do as well. It's not topic driven. I do think the topics contrive and stifle what we're trying to do.
I will come back to the messages on the chat, but I think I'm right in saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong on the chat, that in the moment planning goes with what the child's interested in, and you don't introduce anything that isn't introduced by the child. Now, I think I'm not necessarily a topic person, but I do think there is the need to bring in different festivals, different things that are happening in the world, things the children are seeing on the TV, on the news, perhaps. I do think it's important to bring those in, but my ethos would be it should be child-led. It should be what the child's into, or we use the child's interests to enable them to learn that skill or that knowledge. from my point of view. Nobody's telling me if it is in the moment planning. I thought in the moment planning, you didn't actually introduce anything unless the child brought it up. I might be wrong on that. Somebody will correct me on the recording, perhaps. And I disagree with that. I think we should bring attention to things. I mean, I can remember in my nurseries when the Twin Towers came down, and we had children building tall skyscrapers and had planes and were knocking them down. And if we just ignored that, or if we didn't facilitate it, we did end up facilitating it. You know, one child started doing it, and we realized we needed to have lots of bricks and lots of planes and enable more children and to be able to talk about it. Because observations is also about a child's well-being, isn't it? You know, what we notice is perhaps worrying the child, or etc. So slightly different viewpoint on that. We work with children through a Getting Ready to Learn program. This is working with parents. Claire can explain. We invite them into the play alongside the children in different areas of focus. Lovely way to engage parents, and with low cost, no cost for materials from home in a fun, engaging way. I can see that working in a school where parents are not working, but I think that, I mean, I have done that. My nursery's had a play morning where we had the clay, the plasticine, and the dough out with the sand and water, and we got all the parents involved. Done that.
Yeah, we do have that for our programme for 2-year-olds in Northern Ireland. That's actually a requisite.
What do you mean by requisite? You have to do it.
If you are successful in getting a place for your child within the programme for 2-year-olds here, you also have to commit to engaging in what we call stay and play sessions.
Yeah.
Which means that they're doing exactly what Frances says there. Probably that model that Frances is talking about originated in the 2-year-old programme, where it's the stay and play, and absolutely fabulous work happens there.
I think that's amazing.
And in the programme for 2-year-olds, that's a Sure Start programme. They have really refined that significantly. So every month they have a key message. And the message then will also, if you've got a Sure Start in your area, which may be the case where Frances is, the key message is the same in the nursery as it is in the programme for 2-year-olds, so that the parents of children who are in 2-year-old programmes, who may also have children in nursery, are getting the same consistent message. It could be about nighttime reading a story to your children. It could be about looking after your teeth. It can be about healthy eating. It can be about just simple games to do at home with your children using low cost, no cost items. Really lovely materials and lovely way to work with parents.
I think that's fantastic, because many parents don't know how to parent, do they? You know, we know that parents sometimes find it really difficult, and sometimes they can be very lonely, because a lot of the time now they don't have an extended family. So I think that's a super idea. We've got a comment here. It's all right. We don't worry about typos. In the moment, we introduce festivals in the moment, but we don't force children to engage with it. Well, I don't think you should force any child to engage with anything. For example, we have discussion photographs that we change this week's Chinese New Year. We rotate our books to reflect the sessions and different festivals and celebrations. I think that's excellent practice, personally. But I'd be putting books, you know, I would, in my head, I would be thinking, well, these children need to perhaps handle books a bit more. So I'd perhaps put those books where the children play. So they're actually in their play area. If they gravitate towards the bricks, or if they gravitate towards the home corner, then I would have those there. Same with markers, all that sort of thing. I think that's, again, something really important with observations. It's not just about what the children can or can't do. It's also about where they like to be in your environment, and how they engage with it, and who do they like to play with, you know, or play alongside, you know, who's important to them. when they come in. And in a nursery situation where perhaps Tom's not here this morning, and that might be the best, put friend in inverted commas, you know, the person the child gravitates towards, then we need to recognise that, I think. Yes, we have recipe books in the home corner. Great. Music books next to our instruments. Excellent. Super. So observations have a lot to answer for, don't they? I know we're talking to the converted here, and hopefully we'll have lots of people watching this video at a later date, and I shall certainly be posting it about. Does anybody have any last comments or questions or something that they perhaps disagree with? Please speak up, because we'll wrap up. Claire, want to say anything else?
No, I just one thing that has come up, and I know it will come up now, and this is probably a big topic, is using artificial intelligence for assessments.
Yes, we're having a spark. We are actually having a spark debate on this. All right, in the future. So that's coming up later in the year.
That is a big one, but definitely worth looking at. The danger with it is that we use then the assessment that AI generates, and we don't really look at the information. We think, box ticked, we've got our assessment done, pop it into the child's folder without having the rich discussion that goes on whenever you actually do the assessment yourselves. I have actually inputted the children's observations into ChatGPT, and they have given me straight back within seconds the most fabulous assessments. Now, we already have the assessments done, and I have to say we are right bang on the button every time, but it gives you them back like within seconds. And I always say to practitioners that it takes about 15 minutes to do a very concise and clear assessment on a child. 15 minutes that child is entitled to of your time. And, you know, so there is a real danger there that we start using those artificial methods and not really thinking about children's development. And I also think whenever you process through with other adults all of the observations and you do your assessments, while doing that, you're already talking about the next steps for the child. So that's where AI, I think, will fall down. It's not giving us the opportunity to process and generate the next steps. And indeed, AI does generate the next steps for you as well, because I actually got them to generate, and anybody that knows me, Francis, might know the observation format I use. I have actually asked AI to generate the assessment
based on your curriculum in Ireland.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I've done is I have given them my observations of Maeve, and I've asked them to assess Maeve against, well, actually, I didn't say the curriculum in Ireland, but they can do it against any curriculum. I just said assess it against curricular areas and give me the next steps. And it came back and said, would you like this done on a particular format? So I uploaded my format to ChatGPT and they filled in the format for me. So Francis, are you taking note, or anybody else there that's using my system? But the danger is with doing that is that we don't really think about the children. We just see it as a paper tick box exercise. I think we will lose so much richness whenever we do that. But it's there. Yeah. It's definitely up for discussion. It's up for debate.
You see, my software will do the assessments automatically, but with it's a 360 degrees. So practitioners have to evaluate it and then look at their practice and what are they going to do differently. Now, if something is already written up, and when they write a report to parent, although most of the report, which I sent to you, Claire, by the way, most of the report is actually made by the software. It's up to the educator, the practitioner, to decide what the parent could be doing with their child at home. And although that's not a meeting, because the software is being devised for nurseries and preschools, it does make people reflect, because
Yeah.
they have to think, well, what,
Mhm.
it's no good giving a parent's messy play, some form of messy play to do at home for hand-eye coordination or whatever the reason is, if you know that parent's just not going to do it.
Yeah.
They have to really think about what they're actually giving. But AI is, as I say, is a subject that's going to come up. I'm very very interested to see.
Yeah, it is a big debate.
Yes. Right, folks. So I'm going to now, if nobody wants to say anything else, it's been really good. Thank you very much, Claire.